people I know think you're the best person. So,
Oh, that's scary and
my
exciting.
experience is, people you like and respect is going to be someone that's worth knowing. I'm just delighted to get the
that's
chance.
a good rule.
It
I
is.
like that, and that's been true for everyone Carmen's been introduced me to. So,
Well,
yeah.
I was very lucky to meet wonderful people in my life and career.
Wait, why do you say was?
Well, I mean, I'm
What? Do you have news?
I'm 70. And by the way, I met in recent weeks, I met a trans young person who believed that a career in the intelligence community was an impossibility.
Oh.
And so we Zoomed yesterday because I told this person, I'm trying to avoid identifying this individual.
Right.
I told this person, call him person X. I told X that I didn't think that was true. And then I was talking to a colleague of mine, also retired, Karen Monahan.
Oh man. I haven't thought about Karen in a long time.
Good friend of mine, I was pretty much her first boss. I was almost certainly her first good boss. No, I don't know about that. But Karen reminded me of someone at CIA, an analyst who transitioned.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Once they were hired. And so I was able to convey all this information that I think gave X a better idea. Anyway, at one point in the conversation, something about time or something got said that I felt like saying, well, I'm 70 and God bless X. X went, away. X said, I thought you were in your 50s. And so that pleased me to no end.
That is always delightful.
It's
such
delightful.
an easy win.
Yeah.
And it's so true. My dad passed away this past year.
Oh, tough year for you.
It's just impossible year.
Yeah.
But he said that he felt the same age until he was 80.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. And he said that at 80, he started noticing that he could, a little bit of aphasia, like couldn't always find the words, a little bit slower, didn't feel quite as good. But I'll tell you what, that man ran through the tape at 98. So
yeah. Oh, hey, very good.
But he said 70, it was like the same age he'd always been.
Yeah. Well, so far that's how I feel. I turned 70 3 months ago. And I feel strong.
I don't think I'd want to be 25 now.
Oh my God.
Oh, geez.
That would be like a curse. Like
I know.
It just
like, I'm pretty happy where I am. I'll take every one of the years I have.
I don't know if anyone ever wants to live through those years. It's harrowing.
So I know that we want to talk about women's sports because we had that conversation.
I love women's sports.
A couple of months ago.
Basketball forward.
And I'm just curious, and we'll give you a chance to see this before we make it public if you want. So, but I'm just curious, what, if anything, about your intelligence career or the state of the nation, humanity, you would like to talk to? I mean, one question that came to my mind that I thought I could ask you is, at this point, what are you surprised that hasn't changed in the intelligence community? Like from when you started to where are you now? Is there anything that you thought, oh, for sure, this will be different in 30, 40 years, and yet it isn't? You don't have to answer that now, but I'm just...
That's such a good question.
I'm just asking if you think that's a good question to talk about.
No, I love that. I love that question. And I think there are some good things that I don't think it has changed. And I think there are some things that I am flummoxed
right
about it not changing.
Right. And so we'll get to that.
Yeah. No, I
but-
love that question.
But before we go there, we always forget to introduce our
Yes,
guests.
yes, we're here with the Honorable Sue Gordon. Hello.
Yes, and I'm just curious how, if you're traveling overseas or in some context where nobody knows you, your face, how do you introduce yourself to these people?
I think I probably still, that's a great question. I think I still introduce myself as a career intelligence officer. And then if they're still interested or that doesn't seem nourishing enough, because I'm not trying to be cagey. I probably would have been a better intel officer if I were cagey.
You're right.
I'll say, who now 5 years into retirement is still trying to keep America safe, albeit differently.
Yeah, I think that's, I think that tends to be a goal for all of
Right.
the people who've had significant, I don't mean like important, but just, significant exposure to a national security career.
You know, what's interesting about it, especially in light of what I think there's a horrific lie that is being told, and I think it has terrible consequence in maybe a surprising way, and we can talk about that. But I think I have always believed that intelligence of the national security disciplines, despite the fact that there's lots of fiction around it. I used to say you can always tell who's the CIA officer in a Tom Clancy movie. We're the ones laughing.
That's right.
But I always believed that it was one of those things that people were by and large respectful. So when I say that's what it was, my sense is not at all the you horrible person, but like, wow, thank you for your, I mean, it is remarkable to me that almost universally, with simply that statement, with no mention of position,
Yeah.
It's greeted with like, wow, how interesting, with almost a universal respect.
Interesting.
And I think that is one of the things I always liked about it, even when we were much more secret than we are, is that our brand was pretty good.
Yes. Yes.
Right. And it still is. And I think what I was saying, I think the biggest lie that's being told today is that our government is malfeasant.
Yes.
That's a lie. Listen, we know malfeasant governments.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, yes.
Ours.
They
Our
look
government
different.
is simply our government is simply not good enough. And the problem that I have is this lie about malfeasance at this moment when we most need to get our act together to serve the American people.
Right. And malfeasant is the nice way
Right.
of saying it. Others say, corrupt and evil.
Yeah, but whatever, is that in that statement and in that lie, we will lose the opportunity to do the hard work that needs to be done to make it good enough.
Yeah, I know.
And that's
and we won't attract the people
right
that we need
right
to help us make it better.
Right. Like I have my 5 reasons that I'm optimistic, and one of them is that our government is not malfeasant. It's just simply not good enough. The problem is there is a craft to it. There's a craft to government. I mean, I love America. I love competition and capitalism. I love if you have a better mousetrap and you work really hard, you can make gazillions of dollars. I mean, I just love this about it. But that is in some ways a much, much simpler job than government that is huge, and it has to be transparent, repeatable, and fair. And just your decision-making process is just so very different. So whether malfeasant or just not good enough, we need to make changes. But it would be best if you brought people in who had some chance of being able to do that.
Yes.
Right. It's like we have this opening just by circumstance and by change in administration. My worry is that we'll squander the opportunity.
So what are the 5 reasons you're optimistic?
Well, one, I think we already said we know our system is the one that works. This magic of democracy and capitalism is really quite remarkable. And
2 great levers.
Yeah, it has. And, especially when they're kind of countervailing forces kind of pushing
Mhm.
each other. So that's one. The second is my experience, I'm old and I've traveled a lot, is that most people are good and want the same things.
Mhm.
When you travel
I
this
have a
country,
formulation for that I'd like you to respond to, react to, is I agree, most people are basically good, but feckless. And if I understand feckless is that they don't know what the right thing to do is, as I'm using. I mean, they want to do the right thing, that's their motivation,
yeah,
but they lack feck. I have to look that up. They get confused about what the right thing to do is.
I think that's right. And I think, to get to my kind of my bottom line of my five things is, um, I believe that all we have to do is step into the moment, start doing the right things, start having the right conversations, um, that people will choose it if they get it as a choice. I remember
Yes,
I had
right.
when I was a young intelligence officer, I had a seminal moment. I went up to the Harvard um, school, and there was a class on policy and intelligence. And one of the exercises was we recreated the decision of McNamara's decision to commit more troops to Vietnam in 1968. And we know the answer, right?
Right.
And yet we played it out with the data they had, and we made the same decision to commit troops. And I took
Yeah.
away from that, all we had were two decisions on the table. Both of them were bad. And I have learned since then that if all you have are bad decisions, you need to work harder to have another decision. And I think that's one of the things that for the American people that would choose it if they could is we need to put a different alternative. We need to start having conversations that are worthy. I think we need to start having them at the local level. I think that's where we still have trust. I'm not sure we can start from the top down anymore. I think we have to start in communities,
I agree.
start convincing people that their local representatives matter, start having conversations more to understand rather than to choose A or B. But I believe that is available in part because the all people are good. What I worry about is the fecklessness, and worse than lack of feck is lack of hope.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
That's one of
Right?
my favorite questions. Are you still hopeful?
I'm always hopeful,
I know
but
you are. I have no
but
doubt
I'm
about
but
that.
but I am concerned. So people are good. Um, Man, I love what we have in the private sector. That innovation engine is really remarkable. It has been one of the greatest things that we've had. The problem is that they don't feel responsible for national security, and they are
Mm,
disproportionately. When the world became digital,
I know.
boundaries mattered less. Our adversaries and competitors decided where they were going to go. And so disproportionately, the national security decision makers do not reside in the government. They're in the populace and the company. So for all this great stuff we have, I would love, and I work hard to try and help them understand. So that's three. Um, Four is my point about government, right? That it's not malfeasant, that we need government. If I go back to the COVID warp speed, do you remember those discussions, those evening press briefings where it was like, we'll just turn it all over to the private sector, and they couldn't do anything,
Yeah.
right?
That was a shit show.
And the government couldn't just govern its way out. It's when we finally figured out that the government should do what the government does, which is has deep pockets, long time horizons, and be able to clear regulation, and let the private sector that we actually got. So I love what goes on in the private sector, but I think they need to be more responsible. And then my fifth reason for optimism is that we still have friends. That has always been the greatest strength of America on the global stage is that we did. We are really testing that right now, but it is one of the great strengths. And I think we don't understand how important we are as kind of a beacon, even if we're not putting troops in a place, and even if we're not paying the same money we used to simply stand for something so that others can align to that.
Right.
Yeah, this city on a hill thing,
Right.
it's real.
It is, it
And we
is,
think of it's soft power that matters more than a lot of hard
right,
power sometimes.
But
Yeah.
there's
right.
clearly a struggle going on now, you know, among engaging a lot of people, successful business people,
Right.
People in government, questioning this idea of altruism or whatever you want to call it in international relations, and wondering to themselves, well, isn't it just better to be the meanest mofo in the neighborhood?
The might makes right.
Isn't
Yeah.
that the best way to protect national security?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't think it's very reflective of history.
I don't think so either,
I actually
but
thought I thought the pandemic was an opportunity to make a shift where we realized that isolationism wasn't going to work, that there was a shared dependency, that there were things outside of our control, that we had already moved to kind of isolationist posture and it still got to us and those things. I thought that was an opportunity for us to be a little more thoughtful about it. Listen, I do think that it is absolutely legitimate for the United States to have sovereign needs,
absolutely,
right? Just like
absolutely.
everyone else, we get to have sovereign needs and we shouldn't be anyone's patsies. But this is a connected world that free and open societies need to huddle together for warmth. And I'll take one more second and just say, I ponder this moment because sometimes I have all my hopeful reasons. I also have this idea that if we visited the Roman Empire 30 years after the fall, were they all sitting around in cafes at the Starbucks, not realizing that it happened, and
Oh,
where
I think in fact that's the case.
right, and where am I? So Carmen and Julia, I had been saying that I think the world order that has persisted is imperiled. I actually think it's been obliterated and sides are being chosen and
Yes.
are being calcified. And the only one who hasn't established our position in the new world order is the United States.
It's
And
United
the
States.
problem with that
Yeah.
is that when you watch what's going on in China and in Russia with Ukraine and the ASEAN countries, leaders are looking to see with whom they need to align. And we're not giving them the choice of us right now. And I think that is super problematic. I think it's problematic for us, and I think it's problematic for that thing when I talked about the value of friendship,
Right.
because authoritarianism is really scary if you have no power.
Okay, say more on that because I'm not sure.
because
I'm not sure I could say what you
uncertain,
mean by that.
well, what I mean is said it different. It's both attractive and scary.
Mm.
And what I mean is people don't like uncertainty. What the difficulty of democracies in uncertain times is, man, it's hard for us to coalesce, and humans don't like uncertainty. I always said that my advantage as a change agent is I can stand mess for a long time. And the
It's
longer you
necessary.
stand mess, the better your outcome is going to be. Well, we don't like that. This is a messy world
Right.
that is coalescing along authoritarian lines.
Yes.
If you are relatively weak, you need protection.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're seeing is, and let's just look at Russia, Ukraine, you're seeing a leader who said, I'm just going to take that. And if we don't win that choice, not the war, but that conflict, the people who are bystanders and watching, trying to decide what they should do for their country, they're going to say, oh, I don't want that. I'm going to capitulate, or I'm going to join the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So afraid wasn't quite the right thing, but I just think I just think there's this moment of coalescing and it's well underway. And the United States needs to decide what its position going to be.
Yeah.
This is the this is what happens. I mean, also you have a background in zoology, so I'm fascinated to hear what you think of this idea or this metaphor or this analogy. But this is what happens when an
Sue, you have a background in zoology?
I do.
Oh, I did not know.
My honors thesis was the structural and mechanical analysis of the mesoglea of sea anemones,
Ah,
which are
Mesoglea.
fascinating because their whole body is made of collagen that can either be snot or cartilage. And the magic of a sea anemone is it is so has such a wide range of flexural stiffness that it can be soft in tidal pools and withstand raging.
See, I cannot imagine. So this is related to this analogy. So
Okay.
first of all, I cannot imagine better preparation for your career than to study that creature. It's just like so perfect.
Obvious, right? Why didn't everyone do it?
Right, exactly. The CIA should send people to that school where you learn about this creature and how in one environment it's this way and one environment it's the other way. I mean, it's like, this is what we need to learn from. But my analogy metaphor that I want your opinion on is I agree with everything you're saying. I agree with everything Carmen's saying, but the question is why? Why are we not offering ourselves? Why do we not know what we're doing? Why do we act like we don't know what we're doing? And I think it's because this is like an alpha predator who has been an alpha predator for a long enough time.
you mean the US is an alpha predator?
I don't mean that we're like evil and a predator. I mean, just sort of like if you're the alpha predator on the top of the
We're the top dog. We have
top dog,
been. We have
and
been.
all of a sudden circumstances change, and so you're like have a competitor who's like literally like right there. You're going to be sluggish because you're not trained up in the capacity to adapt. You're not trained up in the capacity to move quickly, and you're not trained up in the capacity to think of yourself as someone who maybe needs to protect yourself in a different way. So yeah, I feel like that's what's going on. This is a psychological lack of awareness of what has just happened. And there's this sluggishness to our response that's like we've been watching TV forever and we're like, what's happening? You know?
Yeah,
or
no,
something.
I totally agree with you. I think the other thing that's changed is one, totally agree with you. We've been the ruling power for so long that we got comfortable. On top of it, one of the foundations of our ruling powerness has been technology. And when the world became digital, every technology became available to everyone. And advantage was no longer in the possession of the technology, we still think it is, but in the clever use.
Yes.
And in clever use, all the institutions and all the advances and all the things we built that were the foundations of our power is now actually sanding the gears. So our adversaries and competitors, now armed with this new technology, aren't going to go through all the steps that we went through. They're going to say, oh, I can use this to do that. So I totally agree. So one, it is just sluggishness is just such a good word. But the other one is this shifting foundation of that power that no longer is available to us. And in fact, what gave us power is now retarding our advance.
Yeah. In some ways, so can I offer some reactions to what you just said, or is there more that you want to say?
Have I told you that I'm the most competitive person you know? So to me, the more engagement, the more.
Yes. Well, so some thoughts. I think John Hagel. Sorry.
And I've been wrong before, so.
Oh, well, we all have. Wrongness is on the path to learning.
Right.
John Hagel and others point out that in complexity theory, survival is at the edge. That if you're at the edge, you're much more likely to adapt because you're confronting the new forces and you change. And so the US, in a way, has retreated from the edge. It's been forced away from the edge, but it's also making choices.
Yeah, I like
it. To leave the edge. And in some ways, so some of the people want to go all the way to the other edge, the edge of like 19th century imperialism kind of edge.
Right.
And then other people, let's just say the Biden administration, have not really been comfortable. We're never comfortable on the edge. And I'm just thinking off the top of my head here. So I could be completely wrong. And just wanted to return the environment to something that they were comfortable in dealing with.
Something known.
And I don't think either one of those was a very good option. So that's one comment I wanted to make on what you said. A second comment I wanted to make, I'm very proud of myself that in the mid 1990s, I went, oh my God, the internet is going to change everything and we better adapt. But as proud as I am of that, I'm very disappointed that, because my job is to be an analyst, that I didn't really anticipate how the internet was going to change government institutions and,
Yeah.
in fact, all organizations.
Yeah.
And like every single, not every, but so many apps that have been developed by private industry, like Arc Mobile, any of those apps could have been developed by government. Those apps are actually riding on government activities, right? They're making it easier for you to pay parking tolls by the government. But government, because its attitude was, well, it had no attitude toward this. They had no awareness, didn't do anything. And then the third thing I'm going to say, and you can choose to react or not react.
I'm gonna.
Okay, well, good. But I sometimes think, and you didn't do this at all, so I'm really just building what you said. A lot of people blame government for their usually economic distress now. Their lives are not as good. Their children aren't going to be able to buy a home, etc. And government, it's not really government's fault. It's whatever stage of capitalism we're in situation. And government is like the poor little sweeper behind a circus parade, trying to sweep the shit off the road, but really not able to do much more.
Right.
So I don't have a solution for that, but I just wanted to make that observation.
Well, those are all so interesting. Let me briefly, one on your first observation on the edge.
Yeah.
I actually just gave a talk last night that said all the great advances comes when adversity meets opportunity.
Yes.
And so we're all here because the lakes got filled with tar and the little fishes, even though they were stuck with gills, jumped out of the tar-filled lakes. And they're like, well, these things suck for breathing, but at least it is some air and we modified. So that's the edge, and that's where things happen. To your point, Julia, we just got comfy, right? And you do have to, and in a weird sort of way, you're always on the edge. If I had any skills at work, I was always able to see that you always had to look at what we were trying to do and the environment in which we were trying to do it, and be willing to throw everything out if what you were doing no longer fit the environment. And that's why, to your very first question, what I am stunned by and dismayed by is the intelligence community's hand-wringing over open source. Oh my God, it's just data. Like, if you thought of us in 2024, think about that job. Anyway, so that, this living on the edges, you just always have to force yourself to evaluate intention and moment, not what you happen to have always done, because that was designed in a different time, right?
Yeah, but that brings, is it okay if, oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a sixth reason to be hopeful about our country. And I want to convince you to stick that on your 5.
Okay.
And it's that people can learn.
Sure.
And that we're slow at learning. We're so slow. We're painfully slow at learning, but we can do it. And when the populace forces the government to learn and says, by the way, you think that we're going to go with this direction, that you think is reasonable, but we're going to go in this direction that you think is unreasonable, and it's a democracy. The learning and the democracy go together in the way that what I mean is people say, until you learn, we're going to force you to learn. Until you learn, we're going to tell you that what your assumptions are, they are wrong. And that's so powerful because that in a democracy, that's the way the sluggishness turns into action and people are pushed to the edge.
Yeah, I love that. I will add it. And I give you credit, plus you're going to get credit because really good stuff, I give a good year's worth of credit to the person before I assume it as my own. So
Oh,
you're there. One other thing. So how is a girl with a bachelor's in zoology able to do what I did? Your
yeah,
point. You are not stuck with the knowledge you have.
no.
If you must learn, you can learn. I think we are going to have to reinvigorate. I don't know that the Department of Education is the most brilliant idea that we ever had, but I do know that education is probably our most critical need right now. Whether that is information quality or whether it is just the acquisition of new things. And since we seem to have created an information environment that people now don't trust, I think we're going to have to be much more aggressive on that front. Just to your point about Carmen, about the kind of neither administration has seemed to be really good at meeting the moments. I mean, there have been successes. There are always successes, but not meeting the moments. I think one of the two things, it's a little bit to your point, Julia, where I think the Biden administration swung and missed a little bit was one, I think the Trump administration is going to relearn this one again, which is, if you recall, when they came into office, they wanted national security to not even be talked about. They wanted to talk about pandemics and environment and climate and social unrest and economic strike. I mean, that's really, you even look at how they kind of set up the national security community. It was like, could you guys stay small and quiet? And the world had its own voice. And so one is you have to be ready for the world says. The other thing is, and I think I could go through and talk about, there were some things that the Biden administration did that I think time will show that we should be really proud of from a security perspective. But remember, they were a little bit like, remember how fun it was to brief Obama? And that's because he was like us. He was thinkers, man. We wrote 4-page articles and it was just so fun to think about things. Doing things, building things is backbreaking physical. If you've never built anything, it all seems so easy. And so I think that's one of the things that the Biden administration missed, was having leaders who had done the hard work of building things. I think intellectually super smart and super understanding. But if you're someone who learns how to be a builder, you have to make decisions.
Right.
You have to make aggressive decisions, and you have to do. And I just think those two things were at tension. The moment was demanding building new things, and we were overpopulating the thinking about it side.
It was a little bit like a think tank. Yeah.
A little.
Yeah.
Right. And again, I try not to judge. I try and look at decisions to see whether they were legitimate decisions, not whether they were good or bad decisions. Because if I wasn't sitting in the chair, I didn't know what was in play. But if I just kind of normalize it all out, I think there was, in the first Trump administration, a little bit too little consideration of second order of effects, not enough on the thinking side. And in the Biden administration, a little bit more on the thinking side, not enough on the, man, we got to do the decision making that requires things to be built.
I think Trump 2.0 might be different. I think there might be, partly because of his chief of staff, but partly because of what he's been through. I don't know. Am I being too hopeful? I think that it might be more of a compromise between those two poles.
Yeah, to me, I think it's, I'm always hopeful. I do think that the bedrock is loosened, and he, as a leader, is iconoclastic enough to know that change more likely could occur in this environment than
Yes,
not.
yes.
So if you gave me, like, there are days when my PTSD kicks back in and I'm like, man, if you give me the role, I'd know what to do with this moment. Right.
Right.
Because I both have a vision for what the institution needs to be, and I think I'd have someone who'd be, by and large, what I thought. So I like that as a theory. My problem is I have not heard anyone articulate what a vision is that you're going to build to. So let's take Doge, for example.
Mhm.
And if you've worked in the government,
We all
we
know.
have spent every day of our lives. There is waste, there is abuse, and there are things that we shouldn't be doing anymore. And if you've had a leadership position, you have actually tried to attack all those things. So that is not a hard concept that you need to do it. But we have also almost all done it by doing a bottom 10% list.
Yes.
And that never works. You cannot get where you need to go by getting rid of stuff at the bottom. What you have to do is say, here's where I need to be. I need to fully fund that. I have X amount of money, so that means these things can't happen. That's how you do it. And my problem is with this administration, I've heard nothing that says any of the leaders are coming in with an idea of what in the national security space, because I pay a little bit more attention to that.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that. And I think because they've kind of adopted the Silicon Valley break everything,
Yes.
that isn't the right approach for government. That
You
breaking
can't, I
it-
mean, you just
it's
can't
just
break
not
the
the right approach.
government. Yeah.
Right. So I think I totally agree with you, Julia, on the academic possibility of the moment that is intriguing, but only if you put the leaders in place. And to my earlier comment, that's a small set of people. I'm looking at Carmen in one of them. I mean, we know but
I
that's
agree.
hard work, and it's hard work to do it within the construct. So I worry about the people who are chasing a ghost of corruption. It's just not there. You might find one or two people, but you're going to waste a lot of time
exactly
on something that's not true. More importantly, you're going to not use the time that needs to be spent on really addressing this conflict between the institutions we have and the moment that needs to be serviced. And I haven't heard a lot.
Mhm.
I kind of wish I were a senator who could ask some of those questions to say to each of the
Right.
nominees.
Yeah.
So what's your vision?
Yeah.
What's your first speech to the
Yeah.
workforce?
What's good? What's your bottom? What's your top and what's your bottom?
And what's your first speech to the workforce? What are you
Yeah,
gonna say? Because
exactly.
ultimately
Yeah.
you're leading humans to do these things. So I think you're right, but I know how hard it is. And I know it's not the same as having an idea and building a
No,
company.
I know. It's just one of the things I learned in government very early on was, being smart is not enough. It's nowhere near enough in terms of the skills you need.
Yeah.
So I'm going to switch subjects completely on you because I'm the official timekeeper of Pandas playing cello.
Yeah, no one would ever give me that job, or I suspect you,
Or
Julia,
me.
because you and I can
so
tell could go
you
forever.
played college basketball at Duke, and how tall were you at your tallest?
I have not shrunk very much.
Okay.
I'm right at 5'9.5".
Okay, good. I'm still 5'2.25".
Yeah.
I'm very excited about maintaining
I
my
wanted to be 6 feet, but not because I wanted to be better at basketball, because I always thought that, man, if you're 6 feet, you look good in everything. Mini
Oh.
skirts, maxi skirts, short blazers, long blazers.
So, Julia, you're 5'11"?
5'11 and 3/4,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I will counter the you look good in everything thing. I think if you can pull it off, but if you have sort of like the science girl body, like you could be 6 and you're just lanky. You're lanky. It's just
Now,
not true.
did you play guard or were you a forward?
So I was a forward. It's funny when I first met former President Trump, or I guess President-elect Trump. I don't know, what do you call him? Like, was he former? I don't know. I walked in the room and Dan Coates said some nice words, and then he said, but she also was a captain of the Duke basketball team for 3 years. And he goes, "Oh, you are tall." And I said, "Mr. President, I'm 1976 tall."
Yeah.
Right. 2017 tall is Brittany Griner. He said, "Yeah, she's like 6'9" or something.
Right.
So
And so I know one of the things that remains just a fascination for you is women's sports. And I've been a sports fan my entire life.
Okay.
I am also competitive, although I try to hide it, not very successfully. And I'm just fascinated at the growth in women's sports, what it says about our society. Men are coming out for women's sports. I
Yeah.
remember watching basketball during the Lady Vols,
Oh yeah.
Pat Summit, that era, and watching it and just knowing that it was, or observing it uh, uh, impartially as a inferior game to men's college basketball. I would say to my friends, why is the ball always rolling around the floor? You never see the ball roll on the floor kind of aimlessly in men's basketball. Well, that of course has all changed.
Mhm.
And I'm just wondering, do you think does this have like more resonance than just women's sports is more popular now? Does it mean more for our society? And any other thoughts you may have on it?
So I think sports is a cultural harbinger, right? I think in certainly American society, I think it's super intertwined, and I think it increasingly is globally, from F1 racing, um, uh, and I kind of trace it back to the 99ers in soccer, the US World Cup team and
Oh,
the
the women, yeah,
Mm.
women's World Cup team, and they packed the Rose Bowl.
yeah.
Yeah.
I went to all those games. Everyone was watching, and I'm fascinated by
My
why.
90-year-old grandmother watched those games,
Right,
you
right.
know,
It was a
absorbed.
thing. It was a thing, and everyone, fathers, sons, daughters, bringing everyone there. And I thought it was going to take off then, and it didn't really. I mean, listen, the National Women's Soccer League is alive and well, but it's still relatively unattended. It doesn't really pay for itself. But now you have a women's volleyball league. I and then you had Simone Biles, and you saw this past Olympics, and you see now that it's not just women's sports, it's sports that women happen to be playing. And you
Yes.
see
Hmm.
Snoop Dogg there, and you see Michael Phelps there watching other things. So then I'll go to my Caitlin Clark thing. So Caitlin Clark, for the past 2 years, she played at Iowa, and she became the biggest thing. She plays a game like Steph Curry. She is one of one. She's Michael Jordan.
Have you seen her play in person?
I have. She's,
Just tracking here. We're talking about basketball.
yeah,
Yes,
basketball.
Caitlin Clark is does
She's
she play
she's
guard?
one.
She plays
She's
guard, right?
guard. She's one of one. She's 6 feet. She's your height. But she's different. She's Michael Jordan. And when she played at Iowa and took this school from nowhere and took them to the finals, the women's Final Four 2 years in a row, the dollar amount that you paid for a Final Four ticket for the women's Final Four was 4 times the ticket price of men's Final Four.
Ooh, wow. That's something.
The women's Final Four game last year drew 19 million viewers, more than any other sport drew that year. And she came to the WNBA, and she's doing the same things. I wonder if she's the next thing that's going to take it over, this moment that has been fomented. The problem is the Women's Basketball Association doesn't like that she's the face of the game. And so you
Mhm.
still see other cultural issues playing out. So I think it's been burbling for a while. I think the Olympics for the past few years, the women participants have been the most compelling participants. I think people are figuring out that it's an entertaining game in a way. The skill, it has driven the skill level up. To your point about rolling balls on the floor, when Diana Taurasi and Sue Bird started playing, they changed what girls thought they needed to be to play, and Caitlin Clark is the next version of that. So I think maybe, but we've got to embrace it. I think investors need to recognize that women have the buying power. In a weird sort of way, in the same way, I think investors have to realize we need to start investing in information quality, not just in cool products that we don't care about the quality of the information. But I think maybe this might be a moment. But even if it's not a moment, I'm telling everybody, watch her play.
Okay, I'll do it.
And the game she plays has nothing to do with the game I played. You can't keep her eyes off her. And I think that's what it takes to get more than aficionado for that sport to want to watch it.
So
See,
go ahead.
Oh, I got excited because the only reason I know her name and vaguely knew that she was basketball is that my son, my ex-husband, my lesbian moms, they all have reasons to tune into women's basketball, and it's the same reason as her. And so they tell me about her, and then I slowly dredged up like, oh, that's basketball. And they have different, but they all have reasons it's her, but it's different reasons. So like for my lesbian moms, they're like powerful women, yay. But then for my ex-husband, it's like, it's just more exciting than men's basketball because they haven't done it before.
Right.
Like that.
Because it's becoming as fast, and she shoots on average further out with more success than Steph Curry, who is the guy. And my 70-year-old brother, who the last time I think he watched a basketball game was when he came down to see me play at Duke, texted me during the games to say, did you see that? So I think this is something that's been building in women's sports. But you have to allow people to take it to the next place without the jealousy that we typically use to prove that we were good too. You have to let someone else be better.
Now, is the issue, I'll ask the hard question, is the issue in the Women's Basketball Association racial?
Yes.
Yes. So they don't they would prefer an African-American be the face.
They would have no problem. I mean, you can see it now. There's a young woman who plays for USC named Juju Watkins, who is shockingly good. Interestingly, not as compelling to watch, but shockingly good. And they basically are skipping over Caitlin Clark, who broke 65 records in her first year and had arguably the best rookie season of all time.
Right.
Setting all-time records, to talk about, yeah, but Juju's better. I'm like, what? And she may be, but
right.
So I think in a weird sort of way, when I say sports and American culture, I think you can see in that the same divide that you see societally between the MAGA population. Two words I hate: MAGA and woke. I am offended by.
They're both horrible. Yes.
You can almost see that same dynamic playing out. And again, I think we need more conversations seeking to understand rather than choosing a side.
Yes.
Like, I don't want people to decide that you're on Angel Reese's side or Caitlin Clark's side. What is that? I think it is far more interesting to ask Cheryl Swoops, who was the modern era's iconic basketball player, who was the first woman who got a Nike shoe, who I bought Cheryl Swoops shoes for my daughter. She was it. I think it'd be more interesting to ask her why she is so overwhelmingly negative about Caitlin Clark. Why? What are you seeing? I don't know her. I know how she played. I know what she lived. What is she seeing? And let's have a conversation about that. And not say, I just
Yeah,
think it's,
this is really complex. I mean,
it
This
is,
is really
but I think it's
complex.
fun. But I think
Yeah.
it's, if we could talk, maybe it's a surrogate for the conversation we need to have as a nation, because
Well, I
think,
mean, in some ways, in some ways it might be. I'm reminded of these articles that I've been reading in the last week about this alarming cancer rates in Iowa. Have you
Mhm.
seen them? Where, yeah, just Google that when we
I
finish.
will.
The cancer rates in Iowa are like, I know I don't want to exaggerate it, but they're statistically abnormal. They are really high. They're trying to understand, I mean, compared to other states, they're trying to understand what's going on. They think, chemically dependent agriculture has something to do with it.
The
Perhaps
amount of
something,
Roundup in Iowa has got to be huge.
having to
Yeah.
do with the particular geography and the way the pollution works in Iowa, air pollution, water pollution.
Data
But
centers,
I
data
don't,
centers.
do they have data centers in Iowa? I don't
Well, I
know.
bet any place with land
Yes.
is going to have land and power.
And
is gonna have-
so there's something just not very good happening there.
Huh.
And so, yeah, I wish I knew what the next thing I should say, having brought that up. I don't, but
Well,
perhaps
I think,
somebody will comment or build out this idea.
so here's what I'd say is, if people could suppress, could lift themselves up. And like I said, I'm not particularly interested in Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy opining on what the government should do. But if I lift myself up, what they're trying to do is a good thing. Right? That's a good thing. RFK Jr. has so many bad theories. Like, we should not be drinking raw milk. No one should drink raw milk. Pasteurization does not add anything. It just uses heat to kill things. So raw milk is more likely to be not good for you because you don't know who's producing it. But raise yourself up and say, should we consider the additives? Should we
Yes.
be more purposeful
Yes.
about this? And so I think your question about Iowa, what I worry is that people would dismiss it of, if you're a conspiracy theorist, you think someone has done that to you. If you're anti-people that do it, ask the question and raise it up. Should we be concerned about that? Yes, we should. So this idea of seeking to understand rather than instantaneously align yourself with a position and do a little bit of decoupling from the problem from the solution, I think is something that we need to do now. Like I think the attacks on the government of California is misplaced and cruel right now. This is an absolutely horrible human disaster. And because I'm not a conspiracy theorist and I tend not to believe that people are purposely bad, that's where I fall. And I think there was a weird confluence of circumstance, much like the Marshall Road fire in Colorado, that was the exact same thing, 100-mile winds, that there was just no way to stop it. That said, that with climate change, we know these are real things. What are we doing, to your almost first point, Julia? What are we doing to take these new problems and find new solutions?
Right.
And I think that would just be so much more productive for us
Right.
as a
Yeah.
society. So kind of get to that.
But sadly, both major sides find it easier to play to their base. So, people that are progressives just blame it on the stupid American electorate, yada yada. When I think, in fact, we have, good evidence that the purely analytic approach is no longer persuasive in a democracy, and we gotta face up to that and figure out.
Shouldn't be persuasive.
Yeah, nor
Right.
should it be persuasive, right? And
So that's where when I said I think we can't start at the top because I think
Yes.
we're already too polluted on that thing.
Yes.
But I think you can have local conversations about the microcosm problems that you're facing in your areas that can include lots of different positions. I think I don't think there's a fast fix to this,
Right.
but I do think it is working locally and seeking to understand and quit eschewing circumstance as either true or false. Just accept it.
I got to
Yeah,
tell
that's
you,
what
I'm
happens.
I'm here in rural Texas, and in rural Texas, on many issues, everyone is progressive. Nobody wants unchecked urbanization. Nobody likes the ranch land being bought up by developers squeezing, 100 houses and 10 acres. Nobody likes any of that. So it's funny to me how on these local issues, you can call that progressive. People are very upset that a quarry is being considered for the area because of the pollution. I mean, there's a whole bunch of issues like that, but it doesn't scale up that way.
Mhm.
And we need to understand why it doesn't scale up.
Yeah.
Oh, I have an idea. I have an idea.
Yeah.
After this, after the Civil War, um, you know, I feel like World War II for this country kind of healed some of the rifts, temporarily at least, from the Civil War, where we moved from the unit of success. Like, let's think deeply about what the unit of success is considered in our culture. The Civil War, the unit of success was like a plantation on the South side, and on the North side, the unit of success was like a city, right? And so that was these were warring senses of this is the unit of success. No, this is the unit of success. And so, of course, you have different opinions about what you need for success because those are different units.
Uh-huh.
And then World War II, the unit of success became our country. We want to be a demonstration that there's can be freedom, that civil rights and civil liberties are really important. That is a really powerful healing for this independent unit of success. Then somehow in the last 20, 30 years, the unit of success became the individual or maybe the company, but really the individual. It's really about the individual. And there's,
Companies are individuals,
well, true, but even
Supreme
so,
Court has decided that.
but it's not the company because the person, sort of a famous person becomes sort of a celebrity regardless of the company or the organization that they're with. And so how can we, the only way to heal that, it seems to me, without doing some kind of another world war for a just cause or an alien invasion, which I'm always in favor of as a way to heal that. But I'm not in favor of the invasion, but as a way to heal, it might be useful. Another way to
Alienus ex machina.
exactly. But another way to heal is to go locally because that's who people trust. You trust someone you can see, you trust someone who's standing in front of you, who delivers your mail, or who helps you out with the ice on the road because they have some salt. And the unit of success becomes our neighborhood. And I honestly think that's where we have to go.
Well, I'm asking this, are smaller countries or smaller governmental units happier than larger ones? I always ponder, how do we govern ourselves at scale? We need government because we need to do complex things at scale. But maybe that formulation is wrong.
Maybe if we won't eventually have to
the
do that.
trying to do complex things at scale that's creating the problems. Maybe the chicken and the egg are reversed. I don't know.
People do tend to do well in small villages, like 10 to 20,000 people.
Yeah, I think there are so many interesting things. One, I think democracy as it's currently being practiced is almost passe. Right, in the sense that
I agree with you.
right, the
I
functions
agree.
compass, Tamir Pardo, head of Mossad, said, the problem is a good decision today is a bad decision tomorrow, but it takes us 2 weeks to make decisions. So what is put in front of you is always insufficient just because
Right.
it's old and it's not good anymore. So if I were And relating back to something you said, Carmen, in your little soliloquy, um, uh, we we were fighting the war on terror and we missed the digital revolution.
Yes,
We did. We woke up 16 years later,
yes,
and the national security community had been busy doing something else, and now we're just woefully behind. But I think we need to, and this is just the Sue Gordon theory of how you need to think about everything. What is the intention of democracy?
it's a good title
What
for a
is
book, by the way.
what is the what is the environment in which we're working, and then how do you design systems to achieve that
Yeah,
Mhm.
effect is one. So we need a new theory of the case.
Yeah.
And there's some academic study there. I do think that data needs to be much more centrally involved in that reconsideration, because I think one of the greatest intelligence failures that we had, in part because of missing the digital revolution, is we still think of most things that have to do with technology as the purview of the technologists.
yeah,
You know, how did we miss Russian interference in the election when we
Right.
knew
right.
from our birth that doctrinally their intention was to undermine democracy, particularly that practice? And we knew in the technical world that Russia was just as good at cyber as we were.
Yeah.
But we never thought,
Yeah.
if
Those
I
two
use,
things.
if I
Yes.
use that cyber thing, I can
Yes.
achieve this
Yes.
undermining thing.
It's-
It's like the twain should. So I'd reimagine democracy. I'd make it integrated with real advances in data, because I don't think you can have the national security community, and that's a much bigger tent today than it was in the narrow military definition, be involved in the advancement of data and data technologies. Because like anything important, it's a risk question, and we are good at understanding risk.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is we need to start developing leaders that are actually relevant in that domain, because I'll say of my peer set, I'm the most technical,
Sure, yeah,
right? And that extends down too many layers.
yep,
And what
yep,
that means is you're not comfortable making the decisions or
Yep.
taking risks that you should. So I would reimagine, I put slam those things
Yep.
together
yep.
into some sort of new campus and new way to think about.
And I would say that despite, the prominence of Elon Musk and other tech bros in the Trump administration, the people that he has actually appointed, the cabinet positions, aren't particularly technical. They seem pretty old school to me.
Right.
So
They
we're a little bit past our hour.
Sorry about that.
No, it's not
No,
your
it's
fault.
very good.
But I wanted to turn back to that question I thought maybe we could consider at the end, which is we're both veterans of the intelligence community. And I started in 78. When did you start?
80.
80. So just 2 years apart.
Yep.
And there's a lot of things that 45 years later, I would have thought would have changed in the intelligence community. But by golly, they haven't.
Right.
And you mentioned one of them already, open source. But yeah, any thoughts on that? What sort of stuns you that we haven't advanced? And you could say this, by the way, for any domain, pretty much, but our domain is national security.
So I'm going to start with, I still think intelligence can be the hero of a story. I think there is, a craft and a discipline that's about knowing the truth, and the truth being, and this goes back to why I actually have the one true discipline to lead to be an intelligence officer, is you want to see what is, not what you prefer.
Mm.
And you want to not judge its goodness or badness, you just want to say it. So a discipline that knows the truth, tries to see beyond the horizon, and allows leaders to act before events dictate, that is incredibly valuable, as valuable today. So the discipline itself, I think, has just as much chance to be the hero of any situation as it does. That's one. Two, we've gotten too far away from what we're really doing for a living. You know, you and I, Carmen, were both raised up by the people that understood why we had a modern intelligence community. And so we were invested in what we were trying to accomplish while we were learning skills, and we are really far away from that. I think some of the reasons that we have unauthorized disclosures is people just don't, swear to God, don't understand what was important about what they were doing. Not that they're necessarily malfeasant, they just don't understand. So getting back to having to understand what your role is now, I think we've kind of lost that tether. I think the open source just sends me over the edge. I think the intelligence community organizational structure could be reimagined. The problem is, and I can speak of this, I specifically chose not to take that on because I only had 4 years. It turned out only 2 years. And I thought I would use up all my time making organizational models, but you could reimagine it. But here's my biggest one. Ready?
Yeah.
Intelligence is about advantage. In 1947, advantage was secrecy. It is no longer. If the intelligence community can't let go of secrecy as its dominant attribute,
Yep.
it will always be too slow. It will not be as useful, and it will be likely to be duped.
And it should end. If it can't do that, then it should end.
Right. There are some things, there might be 5 pieces of information that are so singularly
Yes.
informative that,
Yes.
but it's 5, it's not all. And right now we are openly collecting, we are secretly collecting open information. We don't use information we have because we're not sure who can share it with. We don't know where our stuff is, and we are too slow.
The last
And so
couple of years, I was at CIA. I retired in 2010. I realized the CIA is going to end up being the last secret organization in the world, and it is never a good thing to be the last of anything.
yeah,
That's
so that would be, I'd make a big shift of advantage to speed.
Yes,
Rather than that.
absolutely.
And you just can't keep a secret.
That's it. I mean, you can't keep a secret.
Thank you.
It's just pointless, you know.
Our assets are tweeting. I mean, it's just
I serve on the Public Interest Declassification
Yeah.
Board. And it is, you know, and I'm in these sessions, of which I cannot speak, but I always, and you've actually encouraged me, I always want to say, and I haven't really said it yet in one of these meetings, the problem is the secrecy itself. It's secrecy that's the problem. So
Right,
stop
well,
worrying about the declassification, because if we had, you know, 99% fewer secrets, declassification would not be a problem. But
Talk about government efficiency.
you know,
yeah, like I said, and I think one more thing on the open source front is, to my point that national security decision makers are disproportionately not in the government. The intelligence community is now talking more about open source, but they're talking about consuming open source. We need to start producing
yes,
intelligence for the national security decision maker
right.
that is not thin gruel
That's right.
of what is. And if the government can't, I believe I can make a for-profit company tomorrow that could do it.
Yeah, well, I've always said, raised my hand, happy to
Yeah.
to
But
stick
again, what's vexing
the
about
pot.
this, what's vexing about this, you two, is I do believe that there's a demand for intelligence. I just think how it's effected, how it manifests.
Yes,
I
exactly.
agree. And if you solve that problem, you also solve the problem of people not understanding what intelligence is for.
Yes, yes, you would it kind of almost without having to work on it, create a more transparent organization.
Yeah.
That would,
Yeah, you kind of have to
again,
justify yourself differently too.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's almost, it's to the point you both made early on, and that is, if you get too comfy, you rely on that as a reason why you're not other things.
yes,
Go back to the founder's vision. The founder's vision was the three things I said. Man, if I have that mission in 2024, think of what I would do with it.
yeah, or even 2025.
Yeah, or be, oh, thanks.
Yeah,
sister.
you're welcome. So anything that you really wanted to tell
Oh
us,
my God,
pandas, that we missed?
Do you want to dance? We could dance.
Oh, I don't know about that.
No, I'm not, I'm way too shy for that. No, I've loved it. Let me come back sometime. This has been one
we
of
would
the
love it.
funnest, this has been one of the funnest romps I've
Yeah.
had in a long time. And I think for all the people that watch, I hope they come away thinking is we're both realistic and hopeful.
Yes.
Like I think this is a perilous time. I almost personally believe that we have to stay a little quiet to see what manifests in order to know the
agree,
path
I
to take,
agree.
rather than just lobbing old views into a situation.
I agree completely. I see too much lobbying of old views.
Right.
And I think we just need to kind of observe.
But it is a serious time.
Yeah.
And
Well-
and it will require our citizens to get back into the fray.
Yes.
I think it requires even more, like lots of prayer. I mean, I think we require like literally divine guidance because this is tricky.
No, I don't know what we're gonna, I don't think there's any way out except through. And I don't yet know the depths of the through we're gonna have to go.
Yeah. No,
I think
I sense the same thing.
I think the challenge to the rule of the law is the thing that worries me the most. It's a pretty thin tether that keeps us all saying, yeah, we have to maintain that. Right? That we all have to believe and accept something. If you don't accept anything, if you're not governed by anything, if you don't think that, because really, your point, Julia, it was just so good. I meant to jump on it when you said it. We somehow started believing when the internet came to our door that each one of us was the most important thing.
Yeah.
And I think if you look about how the election played out, it was a bunch of people choosing what they thought was best for themselves. But societies civilization requires kind of the willful subordination of personal preference.
Yeah.
And now we had one, we all kind of believed in it, and it's really frayed.
Yeah, very much so.
And so does that maintain? And that's one level from which we're going to build, or do we snap it and we're going to have to build from a different level? I don't know. But I'll do it with you two any day of the week and twice on Sundays.
Well, there you go.
Sounds great.
Absolutely.